Dictatorships rarely begin with a sudden, violent overthrow. Instead, they establish control through quiet mechanisms. Fear spreads in small increments. Dissent is met with forced silence. And the legal system itself is weaponized to protect the state rather than the people. We saw this happen in Myanmar. A nation engaged in a promising democratic experiment rapidly collapsed into dictatorial rule. This erosion of rights is not an isolated vulnerability. The same legal and institutional stress fractures seen abroad are becoming visible within our own global and domestic justice systems. Authoritarian regimes do not need outright wars to succeed. They rely on citizens ignoring the subtle, micro-level shifts that dismantle the rule of law. This fragile boundary between justice and tyranny is the setting for Metal Viper, an international thriller by Sarah Lovett and Ron Schultz. The regime in the novel operates under a chilling principle: order enforced without conscience. The plot is triggered by a microscopic event, the arrest of a poet baker and his 12-year-old son, Vika. Their alleged crime is seditious poetry, writing verses for peace. In a state demanding absolute obedience, language itself is treated as treason. This animated diagram represents a systemic shift. It displays a massive, rigid geometric grid, illustrating how absolute state control functions. Systems like this are inherently unstable. A microscopic variable, like a child's poem, can destabilize the rigid structure, sending cracks cascading through the monolithic block. When a government reaches a state of absolute paranoia, it reveals a massive structural weakness. A 12-year-old's creative resistance becomes an existential threat capable of triggering severe, nonlinear consequences. The arrest to this local arrest in Myanmar scales up immediately. A midnight distress call reaches offices in Geneva, Switzerland. This is where we meet Kaizong. She leads an international organization known as Article 5. Article 5 operates with a highly specific global mandate: the permanent eradication of torture as an investigative tool of state power. Before the military coup, Myanmar was one of their success stories. Now, the country is dominated by the brutal Tatmada regime. The immediate stakes for Kay are dire. She must extract young Vika, operating under the knowledge that his father has already been disappeared into the regime's black sites. Kay's mission demonstrates that you cannot combat severe human rights abuses through bureaucracy alone. High-stakes, direct intervention is required when the rule of law crumbles. The collateral risks are massive. By stepping in, Kay places her Geneva staff, her local ground team, and her own family directly in the crosshairs. Her opposition is a regime enforcer known only as the Metal Viper, a man whose use of vengeance and torture knows no borders. The regime's primary tactical advantage is overwhelming brute force. They rely on heavy military suppression to instill a state of permanent fear. Kaizong counters this force with a highly unique asymmetrical methodology. This chart compares opposing strategies. The authoritarian approach features sharp, aggressive, short-lived spikes of fear tactics. Kay doesn't match this physical force. Instead, her strategy of moral endurance forms a steady, unbroken trajectory, surviving long after the spikes dissipate. She simply outlasts her enemies. Systemic resistance ultimately succeeds by outlasting a dictator's terror, waiting until the illusion of absolute control finally breaks apart. Metal Viper functions as a human rights manifesto within the high-speed framework of a thriller. The narrative is a direct homage to the individuals and NGOs actively fighting around the globe to restore the rule of law. When the wheels of authoritarianism run roughshod over a justice system, replacing established law with hatred and retribution, even long-standing democracies can descend into the same dictatorial destruction that ruined Myanmar. If we ignore the early symptoms of authoritarian creep, we ensure that we will repeat the catastrophic mistakes of the past. The Kirkus Review validates this execution, calling the book a tense, timely thriller with heart and a standout heroic lead. You can pre-order a copy of Metal Viper today at independent bookstores, Barnes & Noble, or Amazon. Recognizing this fictional battle is an essential step in understanding our real-world fight.